Session budget. It's Wednesday, March 31st. We're going to call this meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America,
Republic,
for
which
which
stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Good to have us all here. The night we vote on the budget. Before we put the budget before us, I just want to make a couple of comments. First, the first select woman was scheduled to make a presentation tonight. As we did change the night we are voting from April 1st to March 31st. So she is running a little late, but she'll be here shortly. And she was going to want to say a few words when she gets here, so we'll allow her to do that once she arrives. But for me, I want to thank the first select woman, Brenda Kupchak, for putting forth a sound budget that addresses a long-term liabilities. It laid out her vision for the town, all of which was carefully considered. We have all made our statements. I think we all know where we stand, but I just want to reiterate my appreciation for the hard work she has done with us as a board. I also want to thank the department heads of this town, not only for their assistance this past month, including their presentations and the work they do to provide a budget for their department, but also for the work and service they all provide for this town, especially during this past unprecedented year. I want to thank the Board of Ed for their effort and for their assistance and cooperation in presenting their budget, as well as answering our questions. And I want to thank you, Board of Ed, for the work you have done over the past year dealing with COVID as well. So this is a collaborative effort, and we appreciate everyone's cooperation. So with that said, we're going to go to item number 3, public executive session, and I want to make a motion to put the fiscal year 2022 budget of $335,485,240 as recommended by the Board of Selectmen before us. Can I have a second?
Second
Second by Mr. DeWitt. All those in favor? Okay.
Aye.
So this budget is now before us, and we are going to begin with revenue. Revenue begins on page 11. This is revenue by department. And I am just going to flip through the pages of revenue. If somebody wants to make a motion or has a comment, please raise your hand and we'll stop and we will take the motion. So page 11, we have tax collector, assessor, and building. Flipping to the next page, conservation, engineering, finance. Page 14, fire and health. 15, library. Going into police. Page 16. Anything on page 17? We are on page 18, continuing with recreation. Carl Dickman Golf Course, H.S. Richardson Golf Course. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, Jim, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to propose an amendment to increase, I'm on the H. Smith Richardson. Budget.
Yes.
I'm going to propose 2 to this budget. I'm looking at, hold on, I got to get my ruler out. Okay, it's going to be Department 7113, line item 42471, greens fees. I'm proposing to increase that by 50,000. And the second piece is same department, but line item 42473, golf cart rental. I'm proposing to increase that 60,000.
Okay, can I have a second to that motion, please? Seconded by Mr. DeWitt. Any comments, questions? Mr. DeWitt?
Just for the public, this was a motion, the golf carts was a request from the Director of Public Work, Parks and Rec. And that will come with a requisite expense, making it a $0 item in the end.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, that pretty much sums up that piece of that. My only other rationale for the increase in the greens fees, what we saw last year on Carl Dickman with the new facility, I just expect it's going to do great things up there. And plus, I believe we have an increase in the cost per round. So I just think it's going to be a good year for the golf course.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bateson. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Approval. Okay, moving on. We have solid waste. We have the town clerk. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Hold on. I got to find this one. Okay. It's Department 1030, Town Clerk. Line item 42312, Conveyance. I'm proposing to increase that line item by $75,000.
Thank you, Mr. Bateson. Can I have a second, please? Seconded by Ms. Leclerc. Comments, questions? Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, this is, I appreciate the look that this got on the Board of Selectmen. My gut's just telling me that, you know, I mean, we're all reading in the newspaper how real estate's going. We're seeing our fiscal year-to-date performance in that. I think there's room for growth. I mean, we're seeing stuff pop on MLS, and it's gone and going to bidding wars, and it's just crazy. I have I'm no expert in this field, but I really think that's going to carry over into fiscal year 22 to an extent, and I think it's going to impact us positively.
Thank you, Mr. Bateson. Any further comments, questions on this item? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor, none are opposed. So that passes unanimously. Any other questions, comments on revenue by department? Okay, with that, I'm going to vote. We're going to take a vote on revenue as a whole. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the amended total non-tax revenue of $27,205,744. Can I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Walsh. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, all in favor, none opposed. That takes care of revenue. We are going to go to the Board of Ed. So I'm going to make a motion to put before us the fiscal year 2022 Board of Selectmen proposed budget for the Board of Ed of $192,084,220. Can I have a second, please? Seconded by Ms. Leclerc. Comments, questions on this budget? Seeing none. All those in favor of this budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimously passed. That takes care of the Board of Ed. Okay, well, let's go to expenses. We'll start on page 45 for Select Woman's Office. I'm going to flip through the pages. If anybody would like to make a comment, please raise your hand. So I'm at the first Selectman's Office. Seeing none, Town Clerk. Seeing none. Just want to make sure.
Speak of the devil.
Speak of the devil. Oh, how long were you there, Ms. Kupchak? I hope not too long. Wait. Well, you know what? this is good timing because we'll go back to your budget, okay? So we'll go back to page 45, because we're just starting. So anyway, Ms. Kupchak, welcome. Good to have you here. I'll turn it over to you for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. You changed your vote night, and I had scheduled a forum with Bethel for a Q&A with the congregation, which was very lovely, actually. I just want to start off by saying thank you to all of you, the Board of Finance, for your hard work and for all the effort that you put in all year long, not just on the budget, but on everything for our community. And I know I mentioned this the other night. All the effort that you put in, the average everyday citizen doesn't realize. And so I just want to publicly thank you for all of the work you've done on behalf of our community, and frankly, all the work that you have put in with me. As a new leader of the town, I appreciate your counsel and your effort and your advice. It's really been very helpful, especially this past budget season. I am very proud of the work we did together, in particular, fully funding the money that we all agreed should be deferred last year, approximately the $10 million out of the $18.3 million in total increases. Since the budget was adopted by the Board of Selectmen, we learned the town is projecting a $3.2 million surplus. And as you debate tonight, I hope that you'll consider using some of that portion of the excess to help add to our fund balance. I would caution, as I did the other night, that we do have significant liability still awaiting us due to the fill pile contamination issues that we're all aware of and that are ongoing. In addition, I just want to also add that we do have mounting legal costs because of the ongoing fill pile issues. And I mentioned at our last meeting, we received a brand new notice of violation regarding property that was from 2012. We're still looking into this in details, and I will update the board when I have more information. But I'm expecting this is going to be of some significance. Last year, I promised to change the way Town Hall operates. And I want to thank everyone who has supported my reorganization efforts, which I believe will help make us more responsive to the public. I know there are concerns about some positions, but after being here every single day for the last 18 months, I've seen how our departments operate, and I am confident that the plan I put in place will ultimately be a very good thing for our community. And as I said in the past, you know, change is hard. It's hard sometimes to make a change, but you never know if you can make a change unless you try. I think at this point, I just want to mention that, as you recall, during the fiscal year 21 budget process, it was a particularly difficult time for all of us. We were in the midst of a global pandemic, and we had no idea what the future was going to hold. And so we had some tough meetings, and I'm grateful that we've been working so much better together this past year. But one of the many cuts made by this board was for the contingency for salary increases for all open contracts and department heads. In this reserve, if this reserve had not been conservatively built up, we would not have been able to cover this liability, and therefore the amount needed in this budget FY22 would be much higher. So I just wanted to mention that to you. And again, I look forward to your deliberation this evening, and I look forward to having a budget pass the Board of Finance this evening as well, and moving on to the RTM. So thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Ms. Kupchak. Okay, we went through First Select Woman's Office, and we appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anything on Town Clerk? Fair TV. We need a motion on Fair TV. Ms. Claire. Miss-
Could I make a motion? Hold on one second. To increase line. Sorry. It's line 53,205 of fees and professional services for 4,200.
Okay, can I have a second? Second by Mr. DeWitt. And this is to give our man Jerry a well-deserved increase. Any comments on this motion? Mr. DeWitt?
Only that it's a well-deserved increase for Mr. Spino, who's at all of our meetings, whether it's Saturday or nights or in person or not in person. So happy to approve this for Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any further questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that moves forward unanimously. Administrative services. This is page 54. Seeing none. Registrar of Voters. Seeing none. Zoning Board of Appeals. Seeing none. Town Planning and Zoning. Seeing none. Probate Court. We're on page 65 now. The Historic District Commission. Seeing none. Going to Conservation, page 69. Ms. Marmion.
Thanks very much. I wasn't able to join you on Saturday with the public comment or to make a statement, and I just want to recognize the multiple emails, pleas, entreaties, and that we've gotten from people in town, very concerned about the cut to the administrator position and the concern that our conservation department has pretty much been gutted of its institutional knowledge. And while I recognize that we've hired consultants in the short term and that hopefully there's a commitment in the long term to hire folks in the conservation department, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the concerns that I have and that others have expressed. And while I really like to restore some of this money, it's been said before, we can restore the money, but it's not our decision as members of this board in terms of where the administration would actually put that money. So we could restore money, but then it's really up to the administration to restore the specific positions. So I would encourage members of this community to email the administration directly. I know that Ms. Kupchik has said she's open to talking to people about this and her rationale, et cetera. So I would encourage people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marmion. Ms. Charlton. Oh,
Thank you, Chairman Brown. I also want to acknowledge the residents who provided public testimony, those who wrote emails, including some elected officials, environmental advocates, and others who reached out to convey their concerns about reducing the budget. I'm also aware, I think several of us are, that a petition in support of restoring those funds had more than 1,000 signatures. And again, just want to thank those who've reached out for their advocacy. Candidly, I share the concerns that have been expressed, but as Ms. Marmion said, and as Mr. Mottola said during the public hearing this past Saturday, and as I've publicly conveyed to a number of people who've reached out, I just think it's really important for the public to understand, this board cannot make personnel decisions. That's within the First Select Woman's authority. And she's made a decision as part of her restructuring plan. And whether we agree with it or not, it is not our role, nor is it within this board's authority to make a decision to restore the position. Clearly, we could restore the funding. I don't know whether a motion to do that would get support from a majority of this board. I'm guessing it wouldn't. But even if it did, it's important for the public to know that by doing so, all we'd be doing is effectively just raising taxes to fund a position that the first selectwoman doesn't intend to fill, and that makes no sense. I think, as most people know who are following this issue closely, the director role in conservation is open at this moment. I believe a search is in process. And when that role gets filled, time will tell if this works out. People's concerns may be allayed. That person who fills that role may be, in fact, be successful in doing both jobs and carrying out the mission. They may not be successful. And if they settle into their role and they figure out they can't function effectively and they need more resources, or the first select woman concludes she needs more resources, or the workload changes, I'm sure the administration will revisit their staffing levels as they see fit. And if the first select woman does change her mind on this for any reason, I just want to say I do absolutely commit to support restoring the funding for that position, whether it's mid-year as a transfer or in next year's budget. So again, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to advocate, and I hope that the public will continue to stay engaged and to hold us all accountable on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walsh.
So I guess I'm a little confused. Ms. Marmy and Ms. Charlton, are you guys making a motion to increase this budget and raise taxes for this budget?
No, we are not.
No? Oh, okay. Are we going to be making, Ms. Brown, I just don't know. Are we making comments on, just general comments about every budget as we go through, or are we just here to make motions?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mr. Walsh, because what we're here,
Yeah.
right? We are here to make motions and to vote.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I was getting confused. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any motions on this budget? Okay, moving on. Shellfish Commission, page 74. Seeing none. Legal services. Seeing none. Miscellaneous contingencies. Seeing none. Okay, that brings us to page 83, active employee benefits. So I'm going to make a motion on line item 52100 to reduce this line item, thereby this budget, by $115,903. And this is due just to new information from Aon. Can I have a second, please? Seconded by Mr. Walsh. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, that is unanimous.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Kupchak.
Jared said you might have been making a motion on the wrong line. He's just gonna jump in
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, Mr. Brown, I was just going to say the same thing. It's 183265.
That's right.
What's 1836265?
The health insurance data change was 183265.
That's a reduction amount.
So I read the line underneath. Okay, wait a minute. Okay. I need a ruler like Mr. Bates. So I have to take back that motion, rescind that motion of reducing that budget by $115,903. Mr. Walsh, can you second that? Okay, all those in favor of rescinding that motion?
Aye.
Okay. So going back to active employee benefits, line item 52100, I'm going to make a motion to reduce that budget by $183,265. Can I have a second, Mr. Walsh? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is unanimous. Mr. Schmidt, thank you for catching that. I'm gonna need stronger glasses, I guess. Moving on to page 87. Human Resources. Nothing there. Going through page 89, 90. Community and Economic Development. Mr. Mottola.
Thank you. I'm on page 93. Am I too far ahead on that, or can I? That's part of it.
That is part of it, so that's okay. You're looking at then the capital outlay.
Right. So I would make a motion to cut the $60,000 for the town website redesign. And the reason why I'm making that motion is I do support this concept, but I think we should try to get this budget down. And I think this may be one of those items that we may be able to use the federal funding for. So that's the reasoning behind it. Not that I don't support the idea or concept, but I think it's appropriate to cut it out of the budget, and let's see if we can use some of the money that's coming our way to fund this website redesign.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
So that's
Mottola. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Ms. Marmion. Okay, further comments on this motion? Mr. Walsh.
Have we received any additional regulations in regards to how we use the money? Any updated information since the last time we were updated?
Okay, that would be to the administration, I assume, Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Right, so I mentioned, the other night, Monday night, that no, we don't have anything yet. Still waiting for clarification from, Congressman Hines' office. They're indicating we'll have more specific information by early May, on what we can and cannot use it for. So far, they've said, you know, shovel-ready projects, infrastructure projects, things of that nature. So that's kind of what, I think I mentioned this, I don't know if it was Monday or the week before, but to the Board of Finance, that we're putting together a list of shovel-ready things we have, bridges and traffic circles and all these different things, infrastructure projects together, so that when we do get the full criteria of what we can do, I'm hoping to come back before the Board of Finance, share our list with you, let you know where our priorities are, and then get, you know, a blessing from you, and then the RTM as well, because, you know, we're going to have to move on it pretty quick. What I do know is that you have to have it done within 2 years, the project, so there's that criteria. But right now, it's infrastructure project, shovel-ready project.
Thank you, Ms. Kupchak. Back to you, Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, so what I didn't hear in Ms. Kupchak's statement is anything to do with software design, website redesign, or anything like that. I think it's kind of a risk. I mean, I've used the town website, you know, all the time, and you know, it definitely does need some tweaking. It's not exactly as user-friendly as some other communities, and I think that we need it for our economic development and trying to sell our town. So I'm not going to support it. I understand what Mr. Mottola is trying to do, and I appreciate that, trying to bring down costs. So I do, but I'm just not going to be able to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Testani?
Thanks. Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mottola, is your motion to reduce the entire budget? Is that the 60,000?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Testani, just this
Okay.
one item.
All right, thank you. I'm in the same boat as Mr. Walsh, just for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Testani. Any further questions, comments on this motion? Ms. Marmion?
Thanks very much. I do support Mr. Mottola's motion. I think the money coming down the pike is a great opportunity for us to look at this budget, albeit we don't know exactly what the rules are for the funding. But if we look at non-recurring budget items, such as this website, and cutting them out with the understanding that the first select woman and her administration would likely fund something like this. I think it's a great opportunity for us to cut the budget and then reduce the taxpayer burden. So I fully support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marmion. Any further questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye. In favor is Mr. Mottola, Ms. Charlton, and Ms. Marmion. All those opposed? Mr. Brown, Mr. Testani, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, and Ms. Leclerc. So that motion fails. Any other motions for community and economic development? Seeing none. We have Harbor Management Commission, page 95. Okay, now we're in miscellaneous. Page 100. Contingency. Contingency is on page 100. Presently at $1,586,451. Ms. Bossi? I'm sorry, Ms. Charlton. I think Ms. Bossi wants to make a statement to this. And then we'll come back to you. Thank you. Ms. Bossi?
Hi, I just wanted to give a little update about the contingency, which is closely related to the salary reserves that we talked about the other night. So after the full discussion the other night, I did some more analysis in looking at the full salary reserve, and in conjunction with that, the amount budgeted in the 22 budget for the open contract. As you guys know, the amounts in this reserve are all based on salary estimates, on what we think we're going to be paying out in the future for these salaries. I did have a conversation today with our external auditor regarding the current balance in the reserve, and we are in agreement that the estimated liability that sits in this balance as of now is reasonable. The calculation of this liability is clearly a part of our annual audit and is reported in our financial CAFR every single year. The board, as you guys know, and this town have taken great strides over the years to ensure that we have these adequate reserves to cover these outstanding liabilities. As Ms. Kupchak mentioned earlier, it really helped out with the fiscal 21 cut. As a result, we were able to fully cover what was cut in last year's budget. So therefore, the administration is comfortable with reducing this reserve by $100,000. Any further reduction we would feel would result in a negative budgetary impact, and it would possibly require this board to have to transfer funds to cover any additional funding in 22 or any subsequent years if any further cut is made. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there before any motions were made to this contingency budget.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bossi. I just want to remind our board that the conversations behind this was held in executive session, and so we need to be careful what we say in public. Of course, we can make a motion, but we need to ensure that what we say in executive session, we don't violate that rule of what we say in executive session is there for a reason. We say it there for a reason because it's confidential. So with that said, Ms. Charlton, you had your hand up, so I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Yeah, and thank you to Ms. Bossi for the update, but the number that she articulated, the 100,000, is substantially different from the detailed information we heard the other night. And so, you know, personally, I'd like to understand it before moving on. And so I don't know what that requires, if we need to discuss it back in executive session or not, but I think that the differential is big enough that we should understand how we are arriving at $1,000.
Okay, so are you making a motion, Ms. Charlton? Do you want to go into executive session?
Yes, I'll make a motion to ask that we go into executive session and discuss it further.
Okay, I need a second for that. Mr. Mottola? All those in favor of going into executive session to discuss this, say aye. Okay, Ms. Marmee, Mr. Mottola, and Ms. Charlton. All those opposed? Mr. Testani, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bates, and Mr. Walsh, Ms. Marmee, and I'm sorry, Ms. Leclerc, and Mr. Brown. So I think we've had this discussion on a couple of nights. I think we're comfortable. We understand where Ms. Charlton is coming from, and she can make the motion for reduction.
Well, I'm just going to say, Mr. Brown, I'm not comfortable. I don't know if some members of the board received information that I didn't, but I don't know where the $100,000 comes from, and it is different. So at this point, I don't know what motion to make. I certainly don't want to make a motion that would, decrease this account to an amount that is unreasonable. But how can it be that we are not permitted to discuss this and get the information that we require to vote? I don't understand that.
Okay, Ms. Bassi, can you come back up, please? And nobody that I know from this board has spoke to Mr. Centofanti about $100,000, just, you know. Ms. Bassi, can you just kind of further explain the $100,000 and where it came from and how it's different than what Ms. Charlton is referring to?
Yeah, so there was a greater number that was discussed the other evening. There have been adjustments downward to the 100 level without getting into all of the details on the assumptions due to the open contract negotiations. It's hard to speak about it. I believe some of the sensitivity analysis or the what if things did increase were discussed in executive session a few nights ago. But other than that, there's two pieces to the reserve, right? Without getting into too much detail. One is the timing of the July payment for days that were earned through June, and then there's the open contract piece. The open contract piece has assumptions which clearly we cannot discuss at this point in time. The other piece is the timing of the July payment. There was an estimate in there for the July 21st payment for the June days. In looking at the calendar for the 22 budget, so looking at July 22 and the days that we're going to have to pay out in July for the June, there is one additional day that is going to be needed for the accrual for the 22 budget, which equated to about an 8% increase in that estimation for that those payrolls that are paid in July for June. So between those two pieces, that takes the 480 down to the 100 level, which we're comfortable with reducing it by.
Okay, I'll just say it again. I don't think the payroll accrual that we need for this year has anything to do with next year's budget, nor should it be provided for in next year's budget. I'm hearing from what you said that part of it is that, which I'll state again, is inappropriate. And secondly, that—
Can I call a point of order? This is not, we're way past.
No, Mr. Testani, this discussion is fine. This discussion, I'm going to rule this discussion is fine. I'm not, why are you calling a point of order? What's the?
Because it's already been addressed. The question's already been answered. I personally, I would just want to make a motion. That's the reason for my, which is what, again, going to Mr. Walsh's point earlier, I thought we were in the process of doing tonight.
These questions are to the budget at hand that we're talking about in contingency. Ms. Charlton, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason for the questions is so I know what motion I want to make. So again, I think what I heard, and trying to respect the confidentiality here, is that part of the increase or part of the decrease from the number we talked about the other day is because based on sensitivity analysis, you want to accrue higher wage reserves. I think that's what I heard. And another piece is that you are proposing that we include money in next year's budget to cover this year's payroll accrual. Is that right?
No, I'm talking about, the second piece that you just spoke about is strictly a fiscal 22 event. Is the timing of the payroll in July 22 for the June 22 estimated payment.
And so how much did that second piece affect the 480?
A little under 200,000. And I don't want to interrupt, but you know, through the course of this year coming up, we might know more about these contracts and how they're being settled. So we can clearly look at this, but in looking strictly at the numbers in what was paid in 20, pulling it out to fiscal 21 and now going out to fiscal 22, there is about a $200,000 difference every year in that payment. So there is an additional day that we're going to need to accrue for. And I did go over this with our external auditor today on the phone.
Okay, thank you for that. So on that basis, I would make a motion to let me just get back to the budget book. Decrease this line item 58010 contingency by $280,000, which is the amount we discussed the other day, less the $200,000 that Ms. Bossy just referred to, which from what limited information she provided, sounds like it's legitimate.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Charlton. Is there a second to that motion? You need a second? Seconded by Ms. Marmion. Okay, further discussions on this? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. I'm inclined to support the position of our controller and Mr. Centofanti at $100,000. It is a decrease. And just one clarifying question from Ms. Bossy that might help. If we track this over accrual through the year, is it not within the purview or the control of the Board of Finance? We could move money out of that account if we'd like, correct?
You could, so you're talking about the actual balance sheet account?
Yes.
So as contracts settle, there could potentially be a difference in between what we thought they'd settle for or what is accrued and what actually settled. So that variability would fall onto the accrued salary reserve, but yes, throughout the course of the year, if a transfer is needed, clearly that's under your purview of approving that.
So I'm just offering for a future compromise here. If we do keep accounts in executive session of that over accrual, we as a board could monitor that more closely and potentially move that money out, you know, anytime we feel necessary, and that is more comfortable with Mr. Centofanti. But as of tonight, I really don't want to go above and beyond Mr. Centofanti's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Back to you, Ms. Charlton.
Can I just clarify, just to follow up on Mr. DeWitt's point, did Mr. Centofanti, he didn't opine on the 100,000, right? He talked, did you talk to him about the payroll accrual portion of this?
We spoke
Because
about
he's not going to give an opinion on the wage reserve in our budget, right? He was talking, you know, he was getting to the difference between the 480 and the 280. Is that right?
We were talking about the reasonableness of our current reserve and what I'm estimating our liability to be going forward.
Meaning the payroll accrual, right?
Meaning the two pieces in this accrued salary piece. There's the payroll, the timing of the payroll, and then there's the open contract.
Anything further, Ms. Charlton, on
Nope.
that? Okay, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, we've been talking about this ad nauseum, in executive session. I thought the conversation was great the other night. We were able to drill down on it. We were able to hear the numbers, and they were all pretty reasonable. I will, thank the administration that there was extra money in that account reasonably, because we were able to pay for an amount we cut, this entire board cut last year. Thank God that money was in there, or we'd be raising taxes because of it. So, but with the remaining balance, I have to trust the administration and the finance department. And I appreciate that they went to Mr. Centofanti to have a conversation. And I appreciate the hard work that went into trying to reanalyze it to see whether there was any cost savings. At some point, we have to trust the finance department. Sometimes when we have these discussions, it doesn't sound like we do. But we're a AAA community, and we're that way because we run things conservatively. That's why we are. We're not trying to bring this up and cut a razor's edge on numbers that can go sideways and cause us to have to invest further money. You look at those AAA communities, yep, they have reserve funds. They don't try to cut the number even, and that's how great corporations are run too. So, it's just, we have to be able to trust the finance department at a certain time, and I will just want to respect the fact that they're coming to us and willing to reduce it by $100,000. And I appreciate that you went to our external auditor to talk to him and get his advice. Because in the end of the day, none of us are municipal finance specialists. Mr. Centofanti is. That's for sure. That's his business. So based on that, I'm not going to be able to support this motion. But I would support another motion for a different number.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Charlton, do you mind if I go to Mr. Basin first, or you want to respond?
Yeah, I really do need to respond because, let's just cut it out. This is not about not trusting anyone. I am basing my number on what our HR director told us was necessary, period. So let's just stop the grandstanding. That's where I'm getting my number. It has nothing to do with anything else. My motion stands. Thank you. And by the way,
Ms. Charlton, you've been grandstanding for the last 2 days.
Hold on, guys, wait.
So I don't know what you're talking about.
Guys,
So
okay, both, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Brown, I apologize, but this is not a matter of something you need expertise in municipal finance on. It's an estimate that you say, we think raises are going to be X. This is the percent. X times Y is Z. That's what it is. We heard an estimate from our HR director. That's the number that I'm making my motion to agree with, period. Just want to clear that up. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. This was a difficult subject matter for me. Yes, we did discuss this in executive session ad nauseum, but that discussion was, in my mind, was warranted because it was tough subject matter to understand. I was having problems understanding where the administration was coming from with the numbers. But I got to tell you, I think this exercise for me was great in the fact that I felt that we challenged them very thoroughly, and they went back and looked, asked the experts how far, what's in it. I got a good understanding of where we were. And when I confront people that I pay and for their advice and solicit opinions from them, and if I challenge them, the more they dig in their heels and say, this is what you need, it tends to sway me that they're serious, that this is what, I can't go any lower than this. I can't do this. So I felt that we challenged them so much, they looked at it. If they're not willing to go above that 100, it really causes me concern. It does. Now, I just got to leave it at that because I really think we just put so much pressure on them on this number and on this subject matter that you know, they took a long, hard look at it. We challenged them, and that's the best I could get out of that department. So I'm going to leave it at the 100. That's where I am. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on this motion? We're going to take a vote. Mr. Walsh?
I'm going to make a motion to modify. And my motion modify is to not do the 280, but to change that to $100,000, a reduction.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that amendment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Testani. Any questions on the amendment to the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
That's Mr. Brown, Mr. Testani, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc. All those opposed, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Mottola, and Ms. Marmion. So that amended motion passes 6-3. So now we're going to go back to the number. And
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
I just want to be a point of clarification. I don't mean to be a Robert's rule or whatever, but I think our motion just now gets that before us to vote on. Because now we've amended it. We all agree to amend it.
Right. Now we have to go back to the, now we're going to go back to the number, which is what I was going to do.
Debate, or we can debate the 100 too. I mean, if
Right.
somebody wants to talk.
Right. So what we have before us now is an amended motion. So the proposed budget is $1,486,451. Okay. Any comments on the amended motion? Okay, so let's make a motion for that number, $1,486,451, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Walsh, you make that motion?
Yeah, I think, okay, yeah. I'll make the motion.
Seconded by Mr. DeWitt. Any comments? Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Mr. Brown, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc, Ms. Charlton's in favor, Mr. Mottola, Mr. Testani, Ms. Marmion, and Mr. Brown. So that passes 9-0. Okay. Moving on to contribution to surplus, page 101. Comments, Mr. Walsh.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I may make a motion that in Department 2020 for contribution to surplus under line 58970, that we reduce the proposed amount from $2,200,000, subtracting out $1,200,000 to leave $1,020,000.
Okay, can I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Bateson.
And then I'll just tell you the reasoning. I said it the other night, so I'm not going to be as long-winded as before. I think that we should use some of the anticipated surplus of that we're looking at, but yet I am still nervous about that surplus number with over a quarter to go, because we've seen that number move by $1 million this year from quarter to quarter. So with that in mind, I don't feel like, I think there's going to be some others who talked the other night that wanted to reduce it by the $2,220,000, reduce it to zero. I don't feel comfortable that at all. The other main reason why I want to leave $1 million, $1,020,000 in the account is because if we reduce it further, it'll leave a major cliff. We will be creating another cliff for next year by over $1 million. We just will be doing that. We're probably almost increasing, having a cliff for probably about 12 additional amount, but I don't want to create a cliff. It's just a tax increase next year for the taxpayers. So that's, I'm not willing to go any lower than that. So those are the reasonings. I know there's our Democratic members talked the other night. They made some decent points, but I just can't go where they want to go. So that's why I made my motion. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Mottola.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate Mr. Walsh's comments, but I want to make an amendment to his motion to reduce the fund balance amount by $2,200,000. And like Mr. Walsh said, I'm not going to go into a long detail as to my reasonings because we did that on Thursday night. We are going to have a significant surplus in this year's budget. We can actually fully fund the $2.2 million out of the surplus and have a substantial amount of surplus left over for things like putting some of the money into a legal fund for the fill pile issues and some other things that we may want to do. I think for this year, in an attempt to reduce the tax burden on the taxpayers, it's important that we do this. And the only other thing I'm going to say on this issue is I support the fund balance and the concept. I think I indicated the other night that if we pass this budget in full and cut the entire fund balance, we would still be at a percentage rate of about 10.5%, well within our policy. So I think it's important to do that. And then the other thing I guess I want to say is fund balance is incredibly important, but I don't equate that. I don't think it's exactly the same thing as fully funding our pension obligations. They are different. So I wanted to make that clear. So that's my motion to amend. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Jim, we can't hear you. You're mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mottola. Can I have a second to Mr. Mottola's amendment, seconded by Ms. Charlton? Further comments on the amendment? Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our controller, Ms. Bossy, gave us a briefing the other night and said that there's a projected just north of $3.2 million surplus. And that number's still preliminary. We still have another quarter to go. And Ms. Bossy came with all the normal caveats, which these things change. Even if we do realize that full surplus, $2.2 million out of that number would leave that, we'd leave it just a little bit over $1 million. And I do believe there are other things that we should target that surplus for. So I will not be supporting the motion to increase the 2.2, but I will support the reduction of $1.2 million.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Further comments? Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I understand where John's going, and I do. What I don't like about that conversation is that if we do this, then we're at 10.5, and then to Mr. Walsh's point, when we're sitting here next year, we got to make up that difference to get to 11%, and we have to take into consideration fiscal year, whatever 21, 22 operations, how that's looking. I don't have a crystal ball that goes that far into the future. I'm comfortable where we are now with the third quarter operations and going with the million, going, a full 2.2. I don't know. We're going to have to make up that half a point difference to stay at the 11%. And I just see it as going backwards. I see that as doing harm, which is, the caveat that we always stick on this, that we don't want to do harm. So I don't want to go the full Monty on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bateson. Further comments on the amendment? Ms. Marmion?
I understand and respect what my colleagues are saying in terms of not wanting to go the full Monty, so to speak. But I also am so concerned about the potential tax increase that our citizens are facing. I mean, I've gotten, every email I've gotten has been, please, respect the fact that we can't afford to live in this town if our taxes go up. And if this budget is passed as is, I think we need to take opportunities, and this is an opportunity for us to reduce this budget and apply it to that fund balance, do what we can, but this is an opportunity, we should take it. And if we don't take this opportunity, we're going to really present people in this town with a huge burden, and I find that unacceptable.
And Ms. Marmion. Any other comments? Okay, I'm gonna make mine. What we are reducing this by $1.2 million. And we also hear throughout the budget process, the uncertainties that may come before us. Mr. Baldwin said, we have 3.2 million surplus, 600 of it is because of the non-public bus transportation. But that's gonna be offset with additional litigation. It's going to be offset with remediation. I mean, look, this is where we're at. This is coming down the pike, and we don't know. There's too many unknowns to take it all out. My view, and you know, we talked about this. We talked about this, so you know, amongst ourselves, probably one-on-one phone calls. We discussed this as a group, and there's a difference here in 1.2 reduction or 2.2. And we feel that 1.2, or at least I feel 1.2 is the right number. We thought about it. I thought about it. But I keep going back to what we don't know. And also creating a tax burden next year too. And this is where I think we fail to forget or remember sometimes is what we did last year when we didn't fund the long-term liabilities is it all came back. If we had not done that, we would have a tax decrease. But we did what we needed to do for COVID and for the uncertainties, and I think we're doing that now. If we were not in this situation, I don't think we'd be talking about reducing this at all. And we're going to get to this mill rate at the end of this budget deliberations tonight. Okay, we're going to know what the mill rate is. The mill rate is what we've discussed year after year after year with every first selectman. And I know we have a tax levy, but we have a mill rate. There's two sides of this equation. But I don't want to take us down that path right now. We'll get there. So, I mean, that's my comments in regards to the surplus for right now. Are there any other comments? Mr. Walsh.
I would just like to remind everybody, we talked about it, but I'll just say it briefly to speed this thing up. But, you know, there's a lot of environmental issues all over town. As Ms. Kupchak has pointed out, we have a new one. And I'm not looking to reduce fund balance below it. I mean, this is not a time to be reducing fund. We may need that fund balance. We may need it because we don't know where we're going with how we're paying for remediation. We have a water treatment facility we're going to be building in a couple of years. It's not like we have a ton of bonding rooms available. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with this stuff, but now's not the time to be reducing fund balance. Thank you.
All right. So with that said, let's take a vote on Mr. Mottola's motion, or amendment to Mr. Walsh's motion. All those in favor of the amendment to Mr. Walsh's motion by Mr. Mottola, please say aye. We have Ms. Marmion, Mr. Mottola, and Ms. Charlton. All those opposed? Mr. Brown, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc, Mr. Testani. Okay, that amendment fails. We're back to the original motion now of a reduction to the fund balance of 1.2. I'm sorry, I want to say this, a reduction to the contribution to the surplus of 1.2 million. Any further comments on Mr. Walsh's motion? Okay, with that said, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc, Ms. Charlton, Mr. Mottola, Mr. Testani, Ms. Marmion. That's unanimous. Okay, we're moving on from contribution to surplus, and now we're into the nonprofits. And on page 105, 106, and 107, and to the numbers of 108 is Pequot Library. Ms. Marmion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to reduce Pequot Library from 400,000 to 350,000. So the reduction is for 50,000.
Thank you, Ms. Marmion. Do I have a second to that motion? I need a second. Second by Ms. Charlton. Okay. Ms. Marmion, any further comment?
Yes. As we all know, the town typically supports Pequot Library with an annual budget contribution of $350,000. And this year, Pequot is asking for an additional $50,000 to bring the ask up to $400,000. And that extra $50,000 is really to support the library's need for a new roof. And while I support Pequot and recognize its value and the services it delivers to the citizens in this town, I am opposed to providing that additional $50,000 for their one-time capital improvement, basically. And the reasons are this. Number one, I'm concerned with the precedent that this would be established were we to fund a capital improvement, as nothing would then stop other nonprofits in town from coming to us and asking us to fund their capital improvements. I just don't think it's appropriate. Typically, the money that we give to these nonprofits helps with their operating costs, not the capital improvement. Secondly, Pequot has an endowment, and it's my opinion that they should be using their endowment for this kind of a roof capital improvement project. And the other thing is that Pequot, as well as the other nonprofits, did come before us and say, listen, if you contribute to us, it gives us the ammunition we need to go out and get grants, because we can show that the town supports us. And I feel strongly that a $350,000 contribution demonstrates this town's willingness to contribute to the town, to these nonprofits. So for all of those reasons, I would recommend that reduction of 50,000.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marmion. Mr. Bateson.
Yeah. When this first came up, it raised my fur. I was just like, why am I doing this? And the more I thought about it, it's not our building, but as a taxpayer or citizen of Fairfield, I have like unfettered access to this building. I can go in there. I can, use it as a public library. I don't get charged for it except in my taxes. So I kind of rationalized it in my head that, yeah, it's their building. I get it, but still, I get to enjoy it like I do any other town facility, or especially any of the other libraries. So that's how I got past my reservations about why am I doing this. So that's where I am on that. I mean, yeah. I mean, could they have found money somewhere else? Yeah, but in this economy, any help for these nonprofits above and beyond that, what we've done, I see it as a win-win for me and the taxpayers. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bateson. Further comments on this motion? Mr. Walsh.
I can't support this motion. I'm not sure why year in, year out, some of the same individuals continually go after Pequot Library, but I'm not going to go after their motives. They have them because it happened, happened last year. Pequot Library, as I previously said, is one of those buildings that is one of the 5 most photographed buildings that represent the town of Fairfield. Postcards, posters, all sorts of things. They have privately raised money. It's a $1.5 million slate roof, one of the things that they are known for. And they have raised, what, $1.3 million? So they were just trying to raise the last $200,000. They didn't come to the town first for that money. They came to the town last as they try to make ends meet. And they probably would have had the money if they were able to properly fundraise over the last year, but for COVID. But for COVID. And while I hear certain members talk about they should take it out of their endowment, the same members don't talk about some of the other increases in town that also have endowment. You know, Mr. Jelly just said the other night, they have an endowment. What are we going to make him? I think we should treat everybody kind of equally. And if we're going to say that, and I was going to bring it up this year and have a full-blown conversation here tonight, but I've decided not to put everybody through that, and I don't think we put all the nonprofits or the library on notice. So I'll save it for next year. But if we're gonna start looking at that, then we got to start asking Mr. Jelly, why do we need to give you money? Take more money out of your endowment. Hey, the library, why should we fund maintenance projects or things like that? Why don't they take more money out of their endowment? Ms. Marmion, in regards to your statement about we don't fund capital expenditures, we certainly do. It's right in this capital project. You saw the presentation just like I did. Other people are asking for capital expenses. We're about to pay for an entire chimney for Sullivan McKinney because it's crumbling. That's a capital expense. That's what they're using their 16 grand for. I think it's a good use of the money. But, you know, we do this all the time. We have nonprofits who come to us because of some capital need that came to them. Sometimes they come to us for increased amount because of certain things, because of some certain thing. And this is what Pequot's doing. You know, we could play tit for tat for all sorts of things. When I look at this library, I've told you all before, I look at this as one town, one library system. Because you know what? When I hear the librarians from both places come to speak to us, that's what they say. We're all part of the same thing. So for all those reasons, I think we need to develop consistent policies. If we're not going to pay for capital, let's tell those nonprofits we're not going to pay for capital. Let's make a policy on it. Is it going to hurt people like Sullivan McKinney? Sure is. Is it going to possibly prevent Pequot from getting that slate roof that we all love to look at when we go by and are in pictures that have been in history books for time and memoriam that represent this community? Yes, it is. But, you know, I'm not going to get into it much more. I think we all know how we each feel about this. It's just, you know, it just seems like we do the same song and dance in regards to Pequot, and they have to defend themselves every year. But I'm not going to support this, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any further comments on this? Mr. Mottola?
So I think you're wrong, Mr. Walsh, about Sullivan McKinney elder housing. I guess we have to look at past budgets. They come to us for funding to make improvements to their building. That's exactly what they do every year, if I recall. So they are different. The other nonprofits ask for contributions from the town to help run their services. So we don't generally, as a board, fund capital improvement projects for nonprofits. We just don't do it. And as much as I love Pequot, this sets a terrible precedent. And that's the reason why I can't support it. You know, the Girls Softball League wanted us to fund the lights. And they said, we'll pay you back over 20 years. We didn't even get that from Pequot. And that troubles me. There's ways for them to raise money and get this project done. We are giving them $350,000, which I've supported every year. I don't know why you're saying that certain people don't support this. I've never voted against it. The one time I questioned them was when I was on the RTM in 2009, when the you-know-what hit the fan, when we were really suffering in this town. And that's the only time I suggested a cut. So that's the problem here, and that's the reason why I can't support this. It has nothing to do against Pequot. It's a wonderful place, but I think this sets a bad precedent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matola. Any further comments on this? Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Matola, I never used your name, so I know you have supported Pequot. So I certainly, if there was any confusion out there, wasn't speaking about you. So, you know, I just want to be clear. I said certain people because I just didn't want to really just throw names out here tonight, but I want to be clear. You have been a supporter of Pequot. So in regards to Sullivan McKinney, at times they have asked for capital, but I think if you went back over the last couple of budgets, there have been many years where they just asked for funds because they didn't have a capital project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Charlton, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I do think there's a difference. I don't think I subscribe to the notion that all nonprofits should be treated equally because I think there are differences, and I think there should be some judgment that's applied. Sullivan McKinney doesn't have an endowment as far as I know. But all that aside, I also see Pequot as something, and I do support the library personally, and through the budget, I support the $350,000. I think that this is just another one of those things on the list that is sort of these one-time items, one and done. It's like the website. It's not going to come up again. This is, in fact, a construction project. And I think these are the types of things that should be on a list that we should consider for the federal stimulus money, which can be used by nonprofits. So I'm not going to go on. I think we all know where we're going with this, but just wanted to make those points.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Charlton. Any further questions, comments on this motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion of reducing the Pequot library budget by $50,000, please say aye. Ms. Marmion, Mr. Matola, Mr. DeWitt, Ms. Charlton, all those opposed, Mr. Brown, Mr. Bateson, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc, and Mr. Testani. Okay, that motion fails 4-5. Any other motions for Pequot? Seeing none. Okay, now, up until page 133 are the rest of the nonprofits. Were there any questions, comments, motions for any of the other nonprofits? None? Okay. Then we're going to go to page 135, 134. I don't think there's anything here. Private school bus transportation, that's a reduced budget. Page 136, 137, health and welfare, none, right? Going into finance. Now I'm on page 141. Anything in finance? Seeing none. And then purchasing now, page 144, 145. Let me know if I'm going through too fast. Going to the assessor. I'm on page 147, 148. Okay, tax collector, page 150. Seeing none. Going to information technology, page 154, 155. Seeing none for information technology. Board of Finance. Unemployment compensation. Okay. I'm into public safety now. Page 167 is fire. Seeing nothing for fire. Going to police, page 175. 174, 175. Nothing for police. Okay, animal control. Just gonna skip right over street lights, right, and hydrant and water. Emergency management. Okay, now I'm on page 190 at the ECC. Okay, that takes care of public safety. I'm in public works now. The Public Works Administration, page 197. Okay, Public Works Operation, page 200, 201, going to 202, 203, Public Works Operation. Public Works Operation. Mr. DeWitt.
Oh. My bad. Public Works Operation, I'm sorry, what page were we on? I missed, I'm lost.
Okay, we're on page 200, 202, 203.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to reduce capital by $103,000.
Okay, that's line item 57000, capital outlay. The motion is to reduce capital outlay by $103,000. I have a second for that motion. Second by Mr. Bateson. Mr. Schmidt came to the podium. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Schmidt.
There might have been a rounding issue. The exact amount is 102,500, I believe is what you're looking for.
You are correct, Mr. Schmidt. My error, 102,500. I'll amend my motion.
Okay, Mr. DeWitt, you amend your motion from 103,000 to 102,500. Is there, Mr. Basin, will you second that? Mr. Basin seconds, okay. Mr. DeWitt, any comment or from you?
No, you know, I think removal. Listen, we're funding. We've already bonded $3 million 3-year plan for the Public Works operation, and I do believe there's some other monies possibly available. There's 10 individual capital items in here, so I certainly didn't want to take down every 10 because I want to get this, you know, the Public Works started on their recapitalization of equipment. But I thought a reduction in these two would at least give a little tax relief to the taxpayers in this year.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any further comments? Okay, Mr. Walsh.
I'm going to support Mr. DeWitt's motion, but I will say that I'm going to try to fund these out of surplus, some of the surplus, because I think that he should have the vehicles. But you know, I'm willing to take them out of the budget, but I hope some people will support it when we do talk about the surplus, try to get that paid for with surplus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any further comment? Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, I'll agree with Mr. Walsh's sentiment. If we continue the progress we are on the surplus, I would be willing to entertain that in a couple months when we get there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bates. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor of Mr. DeWitt's motion to reduce Public Works operations capital outlay by $102,500, please say aye. Mr. Brown? Okay, it's unanimous. So all in favor, none opposed, that is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the next building. Next department, building, page 208. Okay, going to engineering. Okay, then we are in health and welfare, page 219. Anything in health? Human and social services. Okay, see non-solid waste. See none. Okay. We're in culture and recreation. We're at the library main branch, page 231. Nothing there. Moving on to library Fairfield Woods. No motions there. Okay, we are going to Penfield. Library's finished. We're going to Penfield. Page 239. Okay, Parks and Rec. Page 242.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris DeWitt. The most hotly debated $150,000 I think I've ever talked about in my 14 years on the Board of Finance. I'd like to remove $150,000 from line 57,000 capital outlay. This is the study that Mr. Calabrese has spoken to us about many times. I am in 100% support of doing this study, and will support funding it in any other way, surplus, federal funding, whatever it is. But again, just to give a little relief to the taxpayers, I think this is prudent to remove from this budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Can I have a second to that? Mr. Testani? Okay, any comments? Ms. Marmion, sorry, Ms. Marmion?
Thanks very much. I do support removing this from the budget. I support the plan 100%, as Mr. DeWitt also agrees with that. But this is one of those non-recurring items that I think we can remove, with the hope that when the federal money comes down the pike, that perhaps the administration would consider funding this project through that. I'd also just like to say that, my rationale is the same for the rationale for why I supported removal of the website, which is that we can fund, this is a non-recurring cost that we can fund differently. But anyway, I do support this motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Marmion. Any further? Okay, I just want to say, Mr. Walsh, your screen is gray. I'm going to take the vote, though. Just want to make sure Mr. Walsh knows. Okay. All those in favor of this motion, reduction of $150,000 from capital outlay, 57000, understanding also, and when the time comes, what Mr. Walsh had presented. All those in favor? It is unanimous. We're all in favor, none opposed. Okay, moving to waterfront, page 247. To the marina. It's page 250, 252. Okay, the Carl Dickman Golf Course. Seeing nothing there. We are at H. Smith Richardson Golf Course. With a motion there. I think we have Mr. Testani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion on line item number 53310, rental and storage, to add $60,000, which was offset by the revenue for the golf cart removal that we talked about earlier tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. Can I have a second to that, please? Mr. DeWitt? Any questions here? No questions, no comments. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. There are none opposed. Okay. We are at retiree benefits. Okay. We are going to make adjustments to the retiree benefits just based on new information and based on our conversations and meetings with our actuaries. And when we make these adjustments, just please note, we want the public to know as well that we are meeting our ADAC, the ADAC recommendations, and therefore this year, both OPEB and pension will be funded as per our actuaries and the recommended ADAC. So I'm going to start with on page 270, line item 52105, OPEB for the town retirees. Make a motion to reduce this line item by $115,000, $115,903,000. Can I have a second, please? Second by Mr. Walsh. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, moving down to the next line item, 52210, OPEB, health for police and fire. I'm going to make a motion to reduce this line item by $40,000. Can I have a second, please? Second by Mr. DeWitt. Any comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. None opposed. Okay, brings me to line item 52310, retirement contributions. I'm going to make a motion to reduce that line item by $78,793. Can I have a second, please? Second by Ms. Charlton. Comments? Questions? All those in favor say aye. That's unanimous, none opposed. Okay, moving to 52311, retirement contributions, police and fire. I make a motion to reduce that line item by $217,328. Can I have a second? Second by Mr. Walsh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous, and that does it for retiree benefits. Okay, keep moving on. Those are the summaries. Debt service. Anything on debt service? Seeing none. Moving to self-supporting. Regional Fire Training School, page 283. Going through the fire school, page 283 to 287. Seeing nothing there, let's go to page 289. And we're going to the WPCA. Same thing as retiree benefits. We're going to make the same adjustments here per the ADAC and per Aon. So if we can go to page 292, and we'll start with line item 52100. I'm going to make a motion to reduce this line item by $3,195. Just an adjustment. Seconded by Mr. DeWitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. To line item 52105, which is OPEB Health. Again, another adjustment. Make a motion to reduce this line item by $142,898, seconded by Mr. DeWitt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that is unanimous. Line item 52310, retirement contribution. I make a motion to reduce this line item by $6,389. Can I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Walsh. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Okay, that takes us through the budget book. What I like to do now is, since Ms. Gardner was good enough to join us tonight, came out of retirement for tonight, especially, if we can get from Ms. Gardner or you, Mr. Schmidt, where we stand with this budget, including the overall budget number and tax levy and mill rate. The mill rate, please.
Okay, the total adjustments to the revenue budget, general fund revenue budget, was an increase of $185,000. The adjustments to the expenditure budget was a reduction of $2,123,589. The net effect to the general fund revenue, general fund budget was a $2,308,589 favorable, right. Let us tell you what the go to tax rate. Okay. You've reduced the budget from a tax increase of 1.90, that was the Board of Selectmen recommendation, to 1.12 tax increase based on your actions this evening. And you will yet have an opportunity after the RTM makes their adjustments to relook at collection rate and other issues that may favorably impact the tax increase as well.
With the mill rate, with the tax collection rate, correct? That's what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gardner. So now we're going to make a motion to,
Mr. Brown, I have a question, if I could.
yes,
What is the number, the new number for the tax levy and the increase in the tax levy?
You want to know the tax levy? Is that what
Yeah,
you're asking about?
The tax levy and the increase, if you could. I just don't have the.
So the tax levy assessed is $315,317,856.
Okay.
And the dollar
increase in
amount is $16,699,771.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Smith, what was that number again? The total?
The increase in the levy? The
Increase.
increase was $16,699,771.
Okay, and what does that bring the budget to? 330 what million?
$333,361,651.
Okay.
Gary, can you repeat that number? 333.
Yep. $333,361,651.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
If I may? I'm told that you need to vote on that number this
Yeah,
evening?
we're going to do that.
Okay. Okay.
That is next step. What I'm going to do is make a motion. I'm going to take a second and I'll allow comments if there are any. Okay. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend the adjusted fiscal year 2022 budget of $361,651 to the RTM. Can I have a second? Seconded by Mr.
Second
DeWitt.
that motion.
Okay, so before we vote, any comments? Seeing no comments, all those in favor of this budget, say aye. I believe Mr. Brown, Mr. DeWitt, Mr. Basin, Mr. Walsh, Ms. Leclerc, Mr. Testani, all those opposed? That would be Ms. Charlton, Mr. Mottola, Ms. Marmion. So the budget passes, goes on to the RTM at a 6-3 vote. Okay. Just a comment for me before we leave. So, you know, another tough budget year, right? We knew last year, this year would be a tough budget year. I just want to thank our Board of Finance members for the work we all put into this. I think we did a really good job filling in the majority of the cliffs we had last year. And there are still others that we know of that we'll have to address. One of them is paving. You know, here's some of the warning shots that we're going to have coming down the pike. Paving's one, pension's another one, right? Because there's a strong potential that the discount rate is going to be lowered to 6.75%. We still have other uncertainties with the fill pile costs we talked about, litigation and remediation. But I think, well, I know we're in a strong financial position. And I think an overall better position than we were a year ago. So again, thank you. Thank you all. Ms. Kupchak, want to thank you. I see you at the podium. I'll still turn it over to comments before we go to adjourn to board members. If they want to make a comment, I see Mr. DeWitt and Mr. Bates. Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like a moment of personal privilege, please. I'd like to thank our chairman for another budget season that we weren't in person, which doesn't make it any easier. It might make it easier that we don't have to drive to a building, but it certainly isn't easier coordinating all the events and all of the numbers and coordinating all of the efforts. So my personal thanks, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate your time and efforts.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Mr. Basin, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Jim. Thanks to you, thanks to the administration, and thanks to my fellow members on the board. As always, it's been a pleasure. Jim, just a point of order. Don't forget we got to approve WPCA.
I'll tell you what. Thank you, Mr. Basin. We'll come back to that.
Yep.
So I made the adjustments into an overall approval. Okay. Make a motion to approve WPCA as amended. Can I have a second? Mr. DeWitt, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Basin. Mr. Mottola.
Hey, I too want to thank you, Mr. Brown. I know we disagreed on the budget this year, but, you know, as usual, you are a gentleman, and I appreciate that. So thank you for your work on this. And I personally appreciate it so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mottola. I appreciate that. Ms. Charlton?
Well, I can't let John say something and not say something myself. So thank you, Chairman Brown, for all your work and for always being a respectful and inclusive leader. We appreciate it, despite differences we may have on, different points. We really appreciate your leadership and your integrity. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Charlton. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the communication we have back and forth of our caucuses. So thank you. Mr. Testani, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo everyone else's comments. This is, I think, very richly deserved expression of appreciation, and mine as well, for your leadership, to certainly the first Black woman, her leadership in both a pandemic and in a Phil Pyle disaster this past year. I spoke about it the other day. And I think in difficult times, stories of leadership, normally come through in different situations. And certainly the budget and the health and welfare of the town of Fairfield was one of those. And certainly our first Black woman, our department heads, our leadership on our board, and my colleagues all rose to that occasion. So I just want to thank everyone, and I'm going to continue to look forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testani. Okay, Ms. Marmion.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. You did a great job. I really appreciate it. I do have one question though before we adjourn. What is the percent increase? That percent tax increase? I didn't hear that. Could we get that figured out so that we could have that, please?
Yes, Mr. Schmidt, do you have that now? We're referring to
I have it,
Okay.
I have it, Mr. Brown. Jared and Linda said it before when they gave the numbers. It's 1.12.
No, thank you for that. What we're looking for, what Ms. Marmion is looking for, is the net current tax levy required.
Hold on one moment.
Possibly. Actually, the gross tax levy required.
All right. So you want the percentage related to the numbers that I referenced before, is that right? The levy?
The tax levy required, not, yeah, we have the mill rate.
Right.
Yep, 5.59%.
So
What number is that?
5.9?
No, that's incorrect.
That's the current year tax levy assessed. That's, so the
Yeah.
numbers that I gave to you earlier, the total amount and the difference, that's what that is in terms of a percentage, 5.59%.
5.59%, did you say, sir?
That's right.
Yes.
5.59%. Thank you.
I don't know why my math says it's almost 5 flat. Last year's final budget to that 333 number?
I think what Mr. Schmidt is referring to is the gross tax levy required. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
That's right.
So can I just, sorry, Mr. DeWitt, it's the 16, so Jared gave us the number of the increase. It's 16,699,771. That increase divided by last year's number, which is 298,618,085. That's the number on the front page of the budget book. That's the 5.59%.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Marmion, thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Mr. Walsh?
Well, I'd like to join in, Jim, with your leadership, your patience with all of us, and your stewardship of this entire process. You're an honorable guy, and you handled this very honorably for all of us. I think everyone felt taken care of. So thanks for all you do in that regard. I know it's not easy to follow up with finance for all these documents people want and all the questions and answered. I don't even know how you work during this whole period at your normal job, so I'm sure they'll be glad to have you back starting tomorrow. But thanks for all you do. I'd also like to, once again, join in thanking the first select woman for doing what our board likes to do and fully funding our long-term liabilities, fully funding the fund balance, doing all the things we want to try to keep, you know, our AAA bond rating and also to fund our long-term liabilities. In this given year, with all the cliffs, the courage that took, I know there must have been a lot of thought to not do it, and to be able to bring a you know, tax increase maybe down to 0 or something, and to falsely do it. But I'm glad we're able to work together so well with our board now. I think we understand each other really well. It's going to be doing great things in the future. So thanks, Brenda, for all of that. And lastly, I just wanted to thank the finance department, which works overtime during this period of time. Jared, Caitlin, and the rest of the team that you guys use, and specifically to Linda Gardner. Love having her back. You know, just when you thought you were out, we pulled you back in. And we might, you know, who knows, try to do it again next year. But anyway, but thanks for everybody for all the stuff and getting all the information turned around so quickly. I know we asked for a lot of things, and your patience, and not getting frustrated with us. I'm sure there's frustration. Just, I'm glad you don't do it on Fair TV, so that's great. But anyway, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. You know, I just want to follow up without, you know, beating a dead horse. But I do, you know, with the administration, and we go through this budget process, I call a lot, and I'm sure when they see my number pop up, they're like, oh, God, right here, what can they possibly need now? What can he need now? So, but they pick up and they call back if they don't pick up, and I appreciate the work that they did, and the cooperation, like I said at the beginning, that we received from the town, from the Board of Ed, but from this finance department, Mr. Smith, Ms. Bossy, thank you for everything. And I do want to thank Ms. Gardner also for coming back. You know, we thought we lost you last year, and that was a tough budget year. I'm sure you ran fast, but somehow we did drag you back, so thank you. And I want to thank the board for your patience and for working with me and for working together through this process. And Ms. Kupchak, you missed my opening remarks. They resembled Mr. Walsh's, so thank you for what you've done, and appreciate working with you and your cooperation as well. And I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and I just want to reiterate my thanks to the Board of Finance for your work with me this year, and obviously it was a lot more pleasant than it was last year for all of us. And I want to especially thank you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, for your hard work and effort. You and I have spent a considerable amount of time together this past year, working and talking and understanding how this process works. And, you know, I just want to mention, I think it's important to note, for me to say that, you know, when I was inaugurated, I had said during my inauguration speech that I hope that I could provide, you know, lead by example to our community about having conversations face to face or over the phone instead of through social media. And unfortunately, some people continue to do that, but you, Mr. Brown, have led by example and have not taken to social media to talk about our budgets or any of our items, but rather have had open discussions in public and also conversations directly with myself, and as members of this board indicated that they were able to have those same conversations with you face-to-face or over the phone. So I hope that I applaud you for leading by example and working in that way, and I hope that I continue to also do that, and because I think that we all could learn a lesson about having real conversations instead of posting things on social media. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership and your hard work.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kupchak. Thank you for that. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Walsh?
I was remiss in not thanking somebody who's there, who actually answered all of my calls and has done a great job in trying to find cost savings throughout the town. That'd be Mr. Tom Bremer. So I just wanted to thank Tom for all his efforts. Tom's had a little bit of a difficult month in his personal life on a couple issues. I'm not going to get into it. But the fact that he was still showing up and answering all these questions and tracking down savings, Tom, I'm amazed by some of the stuff you do. So thank you very much for all you do for the town. And I just felt bad when I got off the thing, and I appreciate Mr. Brown. You allow me to just come in and thank Mr. Bremer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Okay, so with that, we're going to go to item number 4, which is to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Mr. Walsh, seconded by Mr. Mottola. All those in favor? Okay, aye. Okay, that is unanimous, as it always is. Good night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the town residents, and good night.